Syracuse football recruiting remains hot. Elijah Crawford chooses Syracuse.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And on today's show, we are going over the commitment of 6'3", 285-pound defensive lineman Elijah Crawford choosing Syracuse on Friday night. So we're going to go over who is Elijah Crawford, then the impact of Elijah Crawford's commitment. And the Orange are also in the running for another 3-star wide receiver. I believe it was last week the Orange got Gabe Daniels. Now they're in the running for another one. Isaiah Mizell has his final 4, and Syracuse made the cut. So we're going to go over that later on in the show. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. So let's get to Elijah Crawford, a 2025 recruit. He is 6'3". Really, it's listed at 6'2.5", but I'll bump him up to 6'3", 285 pounds. He is a 3-star defensive lineman from Owings Mills, Maryland. He committed to Syracuse on Friday night. As I mentioned, he chose the Orange over Rutgers and West Virginia. Those were the two schools in competition, or the two main ones in competition for Elijah Crawford. It's also nice that they got him over Rutgers. Rutgers had been stealing some Syracuse recruits recently, mainly Michael Thomas, a 4-star wide receiver. So while they might not be the same caliber of recruit, it's nice that Syracuse does beat out a regional rival in Rutgers for someone. In this case, it's Elijah Crawford, a 3-star defensive lineman. His junior year stats, he had 39 tackles, 2 sacks, and 3 tackles for loss. Tough to take anything away in terms of high school stats, but I figured it's information you might want to know. So that's what he did in his junior year. He still has another year to improve, right? He's a class of 2025. He's not going to be on campus this year. It would be next year. Now, as far as what he has said about Syracuse and why he committed to Syracuse, before I give you the quotes from Elijah Crawford, I'm going to spoil it for you. If you are a returning listener, you might have an idea of what I'm about to say in terms of what is important when it comes to recruiting. But if you are a new listener, first of all, welcome. It's great to have you with us. What's important with recruiting, probably the number one thing, to be honest with you, relationships. Building relationships with these kids, because I know there's a lot of talk about money out there, but you cannot even get into the money conversation with a kid if you don't have a relationship with the kid. There's a ton of schools that can throw around money. So how do you separate yourself is building those relationships. Let's get to what Elijah Crawford has said about Syracuse and why he committed. Quote, "I chose them for a bunch of reasons, but the biggest is how secure I feel with Coach Elijah." He's talking about Elijah Robinson, the new defensive coordinator, and Coach Fran. What does that tell you? He feels comfortable. That's a good thing. Next, he said, quote, "At the end of the day, I'm putting a portion of my future in their hands, and just talking with them over the recruiting process, I'm 100% certain that leaving Syracuse and going to the league or not will have helped me be set for life." Yeah, building relationships is quite important, isn't it? I know NIL money. I know salaries. And if you're a returning listener, you've heard me say it a bunch of times. It's about building relationships in recruiting. To make another comparison for you, Jordan Smith, a 2026 5-star prospect that Syracuse basketball is targeting, the coaching staff flew to Turkey to watch him play in the FIBA U17 World Championships. Jordan Smith, a 2026 recruit, 5 stars. Jordan Smith said literally yesterday that now he is considering a visit to Syracuse. If the coaches don't fly to Turkey to go watch him play, does Jordan Smith give him a look? Maybe eventually. But he's one of the more elite prospects in the country, and you're showing interest in him, and you're trying to build that relationships. You fly to Turkey to watch him play, and now the recruit wants to take a visit to your school. There's no guarantee they get Jordan Smith, but you're going to get a look from him. It's a similar deal with a guy like Elijah Crawford. You watch the kid in high school, you talk to him in high school, you get him on an official visit to your campus, and you build that relationship with him so that when the time comes, you know at the very least that you are going to be in the running for the prospect. You're not going to get every single prospect. You can build a ton of great relationships. You are not going to get everyone when it comes to recruiting. But if you continue to build relationships, first of all, you'll build a good rapport come transfer portal time. And number two, you might actually end up getting the recruit. There really is no downside to building positive relationships when it comes to recruiting. As far as a scouting report of Elijah Crawford, this is coming from Hudson Standish. He is a recruiting expert. I'm going to paraphrase what he said about him, but basically, Elijah Crawford plays with a lot of effort and he's got good instincts. So that's always nice. But right now, he does lack size. I did say that he is 6'3", but really is 6'2.5". I gave him that extra half inch because don't we all give ourselves a half an inch taller than what we really are? And he's also 285 pounds, but as a defensive lineman, that's a little bit on the smaller end. Here's the good news, though. Here's the good news. He's got an entire senior season to bulk up. Then he has an entire summer at Syracuse to bulk up. So then you have the college weight training, which you got to figure is better than high school weight training. And in all likelihood, because most recruits do this, they will redshirt their freshman year. A redshirt, in case you don't know, means that you sit out a year of college, but you don't lose that year of eligibility. It is incredibly common, and especially in a sport like football, where a lot of these, even the 5-star football players, do not get on the field in their freshman seasons because they are simply not big enough for the college game. So if he takes a redshirt year in his freshman year, that is another full year to train his body and get bigger. So to do the math for you, you got all summer, you got all your senior season, you got probably 1 year at Syracuse before he's really ever going to set foot on the field for the Orange. You're looking at about 2.5 years before he is really much of it. Maybe he does set foot in 2025, but it's unlikely. But overall, you're looking at about 2.5 years to build up his body to be ready for the college game. So if that's his main weakness, if the main concern is size, then hey, he's got plenty of time to bulk up. So overall, I am pleased. Syracuse football gets another commitment in the class of 2025 in 3-star defensive lineman Elijah Crawford. Now, coming up, I'm going to talk about the impact of Elijah Crawford's commitment on the recruiting class. It's one thing to watch baseball on TV. That at times can get pretty boring, but going to a game in person is an awesome experience, and I'm looking forward to watching the Mets this summer. They're a couple games out of the wild card right now, so they're certainly in the hunt. And the way I'm going to watch the Mets in person this summer, hopefully I don't get let down, is using Gametime. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace in Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. All you have to do is go to Gametime and search the team you want to see of your choosing. Can be MLB or any league for that matter, to be honest with you. All you got to do is just search the team of your choosing and ticket options will appear right away. My favorite part is the all-in pricing feature. Toggling this feature shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the streaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Welcome back, everyone, into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and on today's show, we are going over the commitment of Elijah Crawford, a 2025 three-star defensive lineman to Syracuse. We talked about who he is, and now the impact of Elijah Crawford's commitment with Elijah Crawford on Friday night choosing to go to Syracuse. The Orange now have 4 defensive linemen in its 2025 class. In order in terms of where they rank in recruiting, Eric Thomas leads the way, Halim Muhammad, Nathan Nyandoro, and Elijah Crawford. So those are the 4 defensive linemen that Syracuse now has in its 2025 class. And to be completely honest with you, you can never recruit enough linemen, both on offense and on defense, because you really, really need depth, particularly at those positions. Because how often do we see in football where it's one thing to lose a receiver, it's one thing to lose a running back, but if you start losing defensive linemen or offensive linemen, that can just ruin the game. It can ruin your season. It's not quite losing a quarterback, but I would say it's second and third, offensive line and defensive line. Not even a college comparison here, but remember the Chiefs in the Super Bowl against the Buccaneers? Patrick Mahomes had no time to throw the ball because they had lost all their offensive linemen. So going back to the college game, you can never have enough linemen, both on offense and on defense. So even though they have 4 already, I wouldn't mind seeing 1 or 2 more commits in that position group. In total, in the 2025 class with Elijah Crawford's commitment, the Orange have 28 total verbal pledges in its 2025 class. That is now second in the country, only behind Rutgers, which has 29 commitments. So the Orange are once again 1 player behind Rutgers. I believe for a brief moment they were tied at 28, and then Rutgers got another kid to commit over there. So now it's back to Rutgers has 1 more than Syracuse. But the Orange, with their 28 total commits, that is really, really solid. And some context for you. I think last week I might have given you guys more context, but just a little brief summary for you guys. In the class of 2024, Syracuse had 26 total commits, which is pretty solid. Not bad whatsoever, but they have more this year, which is nice. And in 2023, they had 18 total commits. That's it. In 2023, the final year of Dino Babers, they had 18 total commits. That is really bad, especially for a Power 4, Power 5 program. That's awful. 18, that's it. And they weren't getting 18 of the best players in the country. They were getting 18 3-stars. And there's nothing against 3-star recruits. But if you're going to have a low quantity class, you better have a ton of quality in it. So that's the main difference. This year, they don't have a 4 or 5-star recruit yet, and that could easily change. But they do have a ton of players, and you need depth. In 2023, Syracuse picked neither. We're not going to have a lot of depth, and we're not going to have a lot of quality. So at least it's better than 2023. That 2023 class, by the way, I wrote this down. He was ranked 88th in the nation. 88th. They were behind schools like Rutgers, FAU, Rice, and Eastern Michigan. I don't even know how that's possible. even if Syracuse's class ends up being in about the 40s in the class of 2025, they're not going to be behind schools like that. They won't. Period. So at very minimum, Fran Brown has gotten them above that. And they weren't 88th every single year of Dino Babers. But I think you get the idea that Syracuse football recruiting is a lot better than what it used to be. They are right now in 2025 with Elijah Crawford's commitment, the 32nd best class in the country, which is good for about 8th in the ACC. So they're middle of the pack in the conference. There's 17 teams now, so they're actually in the upper half. That's pretty good. Syracuse hasn't been in the upper half of recruiting in quite some time in its own conference, except for maybe 2024 because they were in the top 40 there. I would have to double check on that. But point being, Fran Brown has done an excellent job so far, along with the rest of the coaching staff. The rankings will inevitably fall for Syracuse if they don't get a 4 or 5 star or a couple of 4 or 5 stars to commit. But at the end of the day, being at the tops of your rankings is not the end all be all. You have to rely on your own scouting, your own football knowledge if you are a coaching staff to go and find these players. Recruiting services are certainly helpful. It gives us, people like me and people like you, a better idea of where these teams stack up. And there's a very positive correlation between having strong recruiting classes on these services to winning and losing. But at the end of the day, these recruiting services do have flaws. They do have their flaws. A lot of it is based on geography. So if it's an area that is heavily scouted, they get a more accurate reading of these kids. If it's in an area that's less scouted, they get a less accurate rating. So that's oftentimes why you'll see a player may be a 3-star, but they're from a region that's not heavily scouted. So therefore, are they really a 3-star? Are they really worse than that 4-star player in a region that's heavily scouted? Or are they just not scouted as much? You get the idea, I hope. At the end of the day, Syracuse has a lot of volume in its 2025 class. Would I like to see them have a 4 or a 5-star in it? Even multiple of them? Absolutely. Absolutely. It's not perfect. But the bar was not set very high in the beginning. And they've already accomplished the initial bar. Can you get Syracuse within the top 50-ish of recruiting year in and year out? Can they do that? And they did it for the class of 2024 in very limited time. And even when they do fall, and Syracuse probably will fall from 32nd, even when they do fall, they will probably still be in the top 50, in all likelihood in the top 50, which is solid. And then you can build that into 2026, where they already have 3 players in its class, and all 3 are 4 stars or better, led by 5-star Isaiah Williams. So overall, Syracuse football recruiting remains strong. Elijah Crawford adds to that list. Now 28 total commits in the class of 2025. But it's not done. Not done by any means, because Syracuse football is in the running for another 3-star wide receiver. We're going to talk about him next. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Day is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Day now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Welcome back, everyone, into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and on today's show, we have gone over Elijah Crawford, a 6'3", 285-pound, 3-star defensive lineman committed to Syracuse on Friday night. So we talked about him. Then we talked about the impact of his commitment. Now the Orange still have the second most commits in the country in the class of 2025, only behind Rutgers. They have 28 total. Rutgers has 29. Very, very strong on that front. Now it's time to talk about what might be Syracuse football's 29th commitment in the class. In wide receiver, Isaiah Mizell. He has his final 4 stools, and Syracuse made the cut. He is a 2025 recruit. He is 6 foot, 160 pounds. He is a 3-star wide receiver from Orlando, Florida. So when I look at that, immediately I think smaller scale, 160 pounds. He's got to definitely bulk up. But he's one of those kids where if he bulks up, he gets to 180, 190, even 200 pounds. That's easily a candidate who could become a 4-star wide receiver, because right now he's a little bit small, but if he gets a little bigger, all of a sudden he might rise in the rankings. He did take an official visit to Syracuse from May 31st to June 2nd, so Syracuse has gotten him on campus. That's a good start, right? Obviously, you got to get him there. As far as the final 4 schools, as I mentioned, for 3-star prospect Isaiah Mizell, the wide receiver, Syracuse, of course, is on it, followed by Kansas State, Arizona, and Georgia Tech. And there is a commitment time frame that has been given out. He is announcing it on June 10th. So I believe that is this Wednesday at his high school, which is Boone High School. And it's going to be from 5 to 6 o'clock p.m. So that is when Isaiah Mizell will release which school he plans on committing to. As far as where he might go, obviously we know the 4 schools, as I said, Syracuse, Kansas State, Arizona, and Georgia Tech. He is crystal balled to go to Georgia Tech. A lot of analyst buzz out there on multiple recruiting services, 24/7 Sports, On3. They have him going to Georgia Tech. Is it the end-all be-all? I would say no. If they don't get this kid, it's not the end of the world. As I said, you're not going to get every single kid that you offer. You're not going to get every single kid that you actually get on campus. And you're not going to get every single kid that has Syracuse or your school of your choosing inside your top 8 or top 4 or top 3 or even top 2. You're not going to get every single kid. It does kind of suck from an ACC perspective that Georgia Tech seems to be the front runner for him. Obviously, I wish the kid nothing but the best. I'm not saying, don't go to Georgia Tech to make me upset. But at the same time, it's like, it looks like he's going to go to an ACC rival. So it might be a kid that Syracuse is going to have to face down the line. Maybe, maybe not. So Isaiah Mizell has his final 4. Syracuse is in the running for him. He's a 3-star wide receiver. They just got a 3-star wide receiver in Gabe Daniels. Don't really know if that's going to impact his decision too much, especially because recruiting, at the end of the day, you can get recruited as the 8th wide receiver in the class, but you can show up to training camp in great shape and all of a sudden you just rise in the depth chart. So that shouldn't really impact it too much. Having said that, a lot of analyst buzz out there for Georgia Tech, but something to monitor as the commitment date, which is on June 10th, or not June 10th, July 10th, approaches. So hopefully Syracuse can get Isaiah Mizell, a 3-star wide receiver, but looks like Georgia Tech is the clear front runner for him. That is it for today's episode on Syracuse football recruiting. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. If you like this video, click that like button. And if you really liked it, subscribe to the channel, turn on those notifications so you know right away when I am dropping the next podcast here on Locked On Syracuse. As far as what to look forward to, Matthew Gilhool, a 2025 4-star big man in basketball, is set to release his final list of schools that he is considering. Syracuse is expected to make the cut. He is announcing it tomorrow. I don't know exactly what time, but I will be touching on it regardless if he has announced it or if he has not announced it. So it could be one of those things where I talk about Matthew Gilhool in back-to-back days. There's Jordan Smith also. I mentioned him at the top of the show and how Syracuse coaching staff, they went to Turkey to go visit him and they watched him play basketball in the FIBA World Championships. he might visit Syracuse now. The quote is probably visit Syracuse, a 2026 5-star prospect. So we're going to talk about that tomorrow as well. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And everyone, take care.